Hey guys, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, chapters 3 and 4. Let's talk about that. Hey guys, John here. Welcome back to my channel. I had an awesome time talking about chapters 1 and 2 for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, comparing the book to the movie. We're going to do the same thing with chapters 3 and 4. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get the notifications as soon as I drop the video. And if you would, give me a thumbs up if you like what you see. And hit me up with a comment. I'm really enjoying the comments. Alright guys, let's start with chapter 3 in the book, Letters from No One. So last time we checked, Harry Potter had gone to the zoo. He'd let the snake out. Everyone went crazy. Dudley almost died. So let's talk about that. Okay, so where this chapter starts, Harry and Dudley are out on summer break. Dudley has been accepted into his dad Vernon's old school. So the name of the school is Smeltings. But Dudley gets a new get-up. He's got a new school uniform, and he's even got one of those hats. Like, it makes me think of the barbershop quartets, how they have those hats. And he's walking around the house wearing this full school uniform with the hat, and apparently he's got a stick. I don't know why he needs a stick, but apparently he's got a stick, and he's decided that it would be great to hit everyone with this stick. Harry's been accepted into Stonewall High, but little does he know, he's not going to Stonewall High. He's destined for Hogwarts. Dudley, like always, is giving him a hard time, telling him that at Stonewall High, they like to take the first-year students and flush their heads in the toilet. And Dudley goes, "You want to go upstairs and practice?" And Harry says something to the fact that, "Oh, that toilet's never seen anything as gross as your face." And then he takes off running. I thought that was great. But everyone is so proud of Dudley. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia are so proud of him for going to Smeltings, and he's strutting around the house like he's hot stuff with his hat and his stick, and Uncle Vernon could not be more proud. Harry, on the other hand, gets Dudley's old school uniforms, and Aunt Petunia decides to dye them to make them the school colors or whatever they're supposed to be. So she throws them in this pot of dye in the kitchen, and it's stinking up the whole kitchen. It smells terrible. Harry says it smells terrible. Vernon comes in and crinkles his face. Petunia doesn't care because she just doesn't want to buy Harry a new school uniform, but they'll buy Dudley whatever he wants, and a whole lot of it. But Harry comes in and he smells the dye, and it smells terrible, and he looks into the pot and says, "I didn't know it needed to be so wet." And Aunt Petunia says, "Shut up, boy." So, and at that time, she's getting mad, ready to smack Harry. We hear the mail slot. We hear the mail come in the mail slot. So Uncle Vernon tells Harry to get the mail. And Harry says, "Oh, make Dudley do it." And then Dudley gets his stick and he starts hitting stuff like he's been doing this whole time with his stick. Harry dodges the stick, manages not to get hit this time, and figures it may be better for him to just go get the mail at this point. So he goes and gets the mail, and it's typical bills, and then there's something out of the ordinary that Harry hasn't seen before. It's a letter to him. He's never gotten a letter before. What is this? Something new. I really like this because the letter is addressed to Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive. And that's just great because they know that he stays under the stairs. It says, Turning the envelope over, his hand trembles. Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, surrounding a large letter H. Now we all know what these animals represent, the different houses of Hogwarts. So at this point, Uncle Vernon is getting impatient. Hurry up, boy! Like always. Hurry up, boy! Hurry up, boy! Where's my coffee, boy? Don't burn my breakfast, boy! It's always, boy, boy, boy! What can you do? Uncle Vernon looks at the bills, gets completely disgusted with them, like we all do, and throws them aside. And Dudley notices Harry's got a letter and immediately rats him out. He's got something.
Well.
Dad, look! Harry's got a letter! Hey, give it back! It's mine!
Yours? They'll be writing to you.
So Uncle Vernon immediately grabs it out of his hand to take a look at it. Harry doesn't like this. He gets mad. There's a little bit of a scuffle between Uncle Vernon and Harry, and Dudley gets in there too because Dudley's got to get his nose into everyone else's business. And then Uncle Vernon realizes who the letter is from. And that's when he gets a little freaked out. In the book it says, Petunia, he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it high, out of reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment it looked as though she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon! They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head with his smelting stick. I want to read that letter, he said loudly. I want to read it, said Harry furiously, as it's mine. Get out, both of you, croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside its envelope. Harry didn't move. I want my letter, he shouted. None of this is in the movie, and I wish they would have drawn this out a little more because I love seeing the fight for the letter between Uncle Vernon and Harry. And Harry doesn't give up. I feel like in the movie, Harry is portrayed as more of a pacifist maybe. And in the book, he's more of a, I want it. That is my letter, and I want it, and I'm going to stand up to you, and I'm not going to stop until you give me my letter. And something else that's not in the movie, Vernon and Petunia make Dudley and Harry leave the room, and they start talking about who the letter is from. They know who the letter is from. They know what this is about. They don't want Harry to have any part of Hogwarts. So Vernon throws Harry out of the kitchen. Vernon and Petunia are talking. They know who it's from. Petunia asks, do you think they're watching us? And Vernon says, yeah, watching us. They're probably following us. And then Petunia says, should we write back? And Vernon's like, no. We're going to ignore it. If we don't write back, eventually they'll get tired of sending letters and they'll move on. That's not what happened. Vernon does not want a witch or a wizard in the house. So that evening, after things have kind of cooled off, Vernon goes to Harry. He actually visits Harry in the cupboard under the stairs. And Harry immediately says, I want my letter. And Vernon tries to blow it off like, oh, it was addressed to you by mistake and, you know, it's not for you. And Harry says, well, what did you do with it? And Vernon goes, well, yeah, it's not for you. I burned it. Burned it? If it's not for me, then why'd you burn it? Whatever. So once again, Harry starts standing up for himself, asking for his letter. He wants his letter. Vernon gets mad and yells, silence! And Vernon says, I think you're getting a little big for the cupboard under the stairs. Why don't we give you Dudley's second bedroom? Second bedroom. A second bedroom, please. So you're telling me Dudley has 2 bedrooms and Harry has to sleep in the cupboard under the stairs? That's not right. I think it's funny how Harry moves into Dudley's second bedroom where he keeps all of his broken toys, and it says that the only thing untouched in the room was Dudley's books, because I guess Dudley doesn't like to read, so he's got a bunch of broken stuff and a shelf of untouched books. Go figure. Under other circumstances, Harry would have loved to have been in that room, but at this point, he would rather be back downstairs in the cupboard. Okay, so fast forward to the next morning. Dudley goes to get the mail, and he notices there's another letter. This time they look at the letter, and it's addressed to Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive. They know that he moved from the cupboard upstairs to Dudley's second room. Okay, so once again, we have another fight. Uncle Vernon is fighting Dudley again over this letter. Dudley wants the letter. Uncle Vernon wants the letter. Dudley's got his stick, and he's whipping the crap out of his dad. I would have loved to have seen this in the movie. Okay, so fast forward to the next morning. Harry sets his alarm for 6 a.m. He's got a plan. He's going to wake up before Vernon gets up, and he's going to get the mail. Little does he know that Uncle Vernon decided to camp out on the front step. So Harry gets up, opens the door to get the mail, and steps on Uncle Vernon. So at that point, Uncle Vernon yells at Harry, makes him go make him a cup of tea. By the time he gets the cup of tea ready, the mail has come, and Uncle Vernon has intercepted it. So at that point, Uncle Vernon decides he's taking the day off from work. He's staying home, and he's going to nail the mail slot shut, because we know nailing a mail slot shut will take all day. You got to take the day off of work for that. That's a big job. So here's another difference between the movie and the book. In the movie, it shows Harry peeking out of the cupboard, watching Uncle Vernon drill a piece of wood over the mail slot in the door. In the book, he is trying to nail the mail slot shut using a slice of fruitcake. I would have loved to have seen that. That would have been a good laugh in the movie. And we know that these first few movies in the series, they have some great humor sprinkled in them, and that would have been another great scene to see played out. One thing I did really like seeing on the screen was when Aunt Petunia was cracking eggs, and every egg she cracks has another letter in it. In the book, it says she went through 24 eggs. So she's cracked open 24 eggs, and each one has a letter in it. That's Wizarding World magic, folks. So Sunday rolls around, and Vernon is tired. He's been dealing with these letters all week. But finally, on Sunday, he gets a break, because there's no mail on Sunday.
Sunday. In my opinion, best day of the week. Why is that, Dudley?
Because there's no post on Sundays.
Right you are, Harry.
But even though it's Sunday, the owls are still there to deliver their letter. And we see thousands of letters come shooting out of the fireplace. And then there's a fight between Vernon and Harry. This time we get to see the fight. And we've got thousands of letters flying around. Harry's trying to grab one and escape into his cupboard under the stairs. But Vernon grabs him and decides they're leaving. They're leaving the house. That's it.
That's it! We're going away! Far away! Where they can't find us!
So from here, in the movie, we cut from Vernon saying we're leaving till they're in the lighthouse, I think it is. There's a whole other part in the book that once again I would have loved to have seen on the screen. But I know I keep saying that, and I realize that they can't take every little thing from the book and put it in the movie. But man, the way these play out in my head, it's phenomenal. I love it. Okay, so Harry and Vernon were fighting, and it says he looked so dangerous with half his mustache missing that no one dared argue. So Vernon has managed to pull out half of his mustache. See, I would have loved to have seen Vernon on screen with half a mustache. Just me. But they load up the car. Dudley tries to get his TV and his VCR. And you got to remember, this was 20 years ago, and when people were still using VCRs. So Vernon and the family take off. Vernon is driving around, doesn't know where he's going. I picture him just speeding down the road and then suddenly hitting the brakes, cutting the wheel, and taking off in the other direction in an attempt to try to shake someone off. So they end up stopping at a hotel and staying the night there. But Harry still manages to get a letter delivered to him at the hotel. It's addressed Mr. H. Potter, Room 17, Railview Hotel, Cokeworth. So Vernon is losing his mind. He's frantically driving around trying to find a place to avoid more letters. It says he drives into an empty field and tries to find a place to take cover, and he stops halfway over a bridge, gets out, and he's looking around. He's like, is this a good place? Nope, gotta keep going. So what does he do? He goes and buys a gun. What's he going to do with a gun? Is he going to shoot the letters? I don't know what exactly his plan is, but he goes and buys a rifle and finds a place to stay. And it's an old, nasty lighthouse. Apparently he thinks that's a great place to stay. So they stay there. They stay in this dirty, abandoned lighthouse. Looks like no one's been in it for 30 years. But Vernon says, hey, this is it. No letters are coming here. This is where we're staying. I don't know. Maybe we'll be here the rest of our lives. We'll take Dudley out of school. We'll quit our jobs and we'll just live here to avoid letters addressed to Harry for the rest of our lives. Okay, so now Harry and the Dursleys are sleeping in this old lighthouse, whatever it is. It's old and it's nasty and dirty, but they're staying the night in it. Now at this point in the movie, we see that everyone's in bed. Harry is sleeping on the floor, and he's drawing a picture of a birthday cake. And he blows out the fake dusty candles, wishes himself a happy birthday, a very sad happy birthday, and then suddenly we hear. This takes us to chapter 4, The Keeper of the Keys. We hear a boom.
Who's there?
And Vernon picks up his rifle and he shouts, "Who's there?" Like that's gonna help. And at that moment, the door crashes to the ground. Who do we see? We got it. Hagrid. The book says, a giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard. But you could make out his eyes glinting like black beetles under all the hair.
He was a huge, beastly, bulging man.
I like in the movie how the music is so tense and almost scary sounding. And then as soon as Hagrid comes in the door, he just totally wipes that all away.
Sorry about that.
Because he just seems like a lovable giant. So Hagrid comes in and makes himself at home, sits down on the couch next to Dudley and says, "Budge up, you great lump." I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it sounds funny, and I'm sure it was not a compliment to Dudley. And then he looks over and says, "And here's Harry." Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle eyes were crinkled in a smile. So you see right there, Hagrid is lovable. Now in the movie, one thing that I didn't really care for was he mistook Dudley for Harry.
Mind, I haven't seen you since you was a baby, Harry, but you're a bit more along than I would have expected, particularly round the middle.
I'm not Harry.
Now throughout the story, we hear that Harry looks just like his dad, except he has his mother's eyes. There's nothing about Dudley that looks like Harry. So I really didn't care for that aspect of the story. So Vernon starts piping up. He starts yelling at Hagrid, "I demand you to leave." And Hagrid's not having it. Hagrid basically tells him to just shut up. And he grabs the rifle and bends the barrel and throws it across the room. And he turns to Harry and he says, "Happy birthday to you. I got some for you." And he pulls a whole cake in a box and everything out of his pocket. And he's like, "Here you go. I sat on it, but hey, it still tastes good, right?"
Got something for you. Afraid I may have sat on it at some point, but I imagine it'll taste fine just the same.
So the cake is a messed up chocolate cake. It's got green writing on it. "Happy birthday, Harry." The movie does a great job with the cake. How it is in the movie is exactly how I picture it in my mind when I read the book. So Harry's still confused, and he says, "Who are you?" And Hagrid's like, "Oh, let me introduce myself. I'm Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of the keys and grounds at Hogwarts." Another little thing that I would have liked to see in the movie is, in the book it says, he held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. I would have loved to have seen that in the movie, just compare Hagrid's huge hand to Harry's entire arm and see him shake it. Hagrid sits back on the couch and he decides it's time for this cup of tea. As he came in, and one of the first things he said was, "Hey, can I get a cup of tea?" So he's making a cup of tea and he starts pulling things out of his pockets. A copper kettle, a pack of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid. I think Hagrid likes to have a drink every now and then. So Hagrid's sitting on the couch. He starts making sausages. And Vernon pipes up again and he tells Dudley, "Don't take anything he offers you." And Hagrid says, "Your great pudding of a son doesn't need fattening up anymore, Dursley. Don't worry." I love how J.K. Rowling wrote these words the way Hagrid would say them. It gives so much more character to Hagrid through the book. So Hagrid's making sausages and passing them to Harry. Harry's eating them up because he hasn't had much to eat. And in the book it says he's loving the sausages. And Hagrid says to Harry, "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everybody does, and like I told you, I'm keeper of the keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. Now, I like this upcoming part of the book because you see Hagrid get angry. And in the movies, I don't remember ever seeing Hagrid get angry, but seeing this giant of a man get angry, that has to be terrifying. "Sorry," Harry said quickly. "Sorry," barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who shrank back into the shadows. "It's them as should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts. For crying out loud, did you never wonder where your parents learned it all?" "All what?" asked Harry. "All what?" Hagrid thundered. Hagrid leaped to his feet in anger and seemed to fill the whole hut. So at this point, Hagrid's putting the pieces together, figuring out that the Dursleys have told him nothing, and he's pretty angry about it because he knew Harry's parents, and he grew to love Harry's parents. Do you mean to tell me, he growled at the Dursleys, that this boy knows nothing about anything? Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school after all, and his marks weren't bad. I know some things, he said. I can, do math and stuff. But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, about our world. I mean, your world, my world, your parents' world. What world? Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. Dursley, he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like Mimblewimple. Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. But you must know about your mom and dad, he said. I mean, they're famous. You're famous. What? My mom and dad weren't famous, were they? You don't know? You don't know? Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildered stare. You don't know what you are, he said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. Stop, he commanded. Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell the boy anything. A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quailed under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. You never told him? Never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him? I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it. And you've kept it from him all these years? Kept what from me? Said Harry eagerly. Stop! I forbid you, yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. Go boil your heads, both of you, said Hagrid. Harry, you're a wizard. There was silence inside the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. Now we see the anger coming out of Hagrid as he speaks. We can just visualize it in our head, just how he's speaking, the tenseness in his voice. Now in the movie, he's much more calm, and it's not like, you're a wizard, Harry. It's more like, Harry, you're a wizard.
Blimey, Harry, didn't you ever wonder where your mum and dad learned it all?
Learned what?
You're a wizard, Harry.
So there's those differences, going back and forth. This is why I like the book. I like this part of the book better than how it's portrayed in the movie. But of course, you can't put everything from the book in the movie. I get that. And let's pay close attention to how Harry responds to this new news. I'm a what? Gasped Harry. A wizard, of course, said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower. And a thumping good one, I'd say, once you've been trained up a bit. With a mom and dad like yours, what else would you be? And I reckon it's about time you read your letter. Harry stretched out his hand at last to take the yellowish envelope, addressed in emerald green to Mr. H. Potter, the floor. It's addressed to the floor. Hut on the rock, the sea. So Harry pulls out the letter and he reads it. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. There's Minerva McGonagall again. Questions exploded inside Harry's head like fireworks, and he couldn't decide which to ask first. After a few minutes, he stammered, What does it mean? They await my owl? So at this point, Hagrid remembers, I forgot to write a letter. So he pulls an owl out of his pocket along with parchment paper and a quill. And he begins to write a letter. And he writes, Dear Professor Dumbledore, giving Harry his letter, taking him to buy his things tomorrow. Weather's horrible. Hope you're well. Hagrid. I love how short and sweet this letter is, and it's to the point, and I find it humorous because it would be like me writing a letter. Dear Professor Dumbledore, found Harry, gave him his letter. The weather out here is terrible. Vernon is a total a-hole. Sincerely, John Bell. So Hagrid rolled up the letter, gave it to the owl, walks to the, I'm guessing he walked to the door, and I just picture him opening the door and just flinging the owl out, closing the door, and oh yeah, carry on, you were saying? So Harry's got questions whirling through his mind. He doesn't know what's going on. He's just been told he's a wizard. Vernon is doing everything he can to stop Harry from going with Hagrid. Vernon's yelling at Hagrid, and Hagrid says, I'd like to see a great muggle like you stop him, he said. A what? Said Harry, interested. A muggle, said Hagrid. It's what we call non-magic folk. From how Hagrid describes a muggle right here, it seems like the muggle is not just a term for non-magic folk. It's an insult. Because he said the Dursleys were the biggest muggles he's ever laid eyes on. I took that to mean that the Dursleys were the biggest idiots he'd ever laid eyes on. So it seems like muggle is a derogatory term in the wizarding world. So Vernon said he swore that they would stamp this out when Harry was young, and they wouldn't allow Harry to have anything to do with Hogwarts or the wizarding world. And Harry said, you knew? And this is when Petunia pipes in, and she says, knew? Of course we knew. How could you not be? My dratted sister being what she was, oh, she got a letter just like that and disappeared off to that school and came home every vacation with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. I was the only one who saw her for what she was, a freak. Wow. Wow, a freak.
And then she met that Potter. And then she had you, and I knew you would be the same, just as strange, just as abnormal.
That right there, that paragraph right there, that speaks volumes of the deeply troubled relationship between Petunia and Lilly, and just shows you how far apart that they were. And at this point, I don't know if the books will take us deeper into that past relationship. At this point, I would like to see exactly what it was about Lily going to Hogwarts and learning magic. What made Petunia hate that so much and hate Lily so much for it? And it shows me just how different Lily and Petunia were. In the book, Petunia goes on to say that Lily got herself blown up. And that's when Harry is like, what? Blown up? Harry had gone very white as soon as he had found his voice. He said, blown up? You told me they died in a car crash. Car crash, roared Hagrid, jumping up angrily, so angrily that the Dursleys scuttled back to their corner. How could a car crash kill Lily and James Potter? It's an outrage, a scandal. Harry Potter not knowing his own story when every kid in our world knows his name. And once again, Hagrid is angry. Hagrid goes on to explain to Harry how his parents died and reluctantly tells him about Voldemort. So he says, you know who killed him. And this is the real mystery of the thing. He tried to kill you too. Wanted to make a clean job of it, I suppose. Or maybe he just liked killing by then. but he couldn't do it. Never wondered how you got that mark on your forehead? That was no ordinary cut. That's what you get when a powerful evil curse touches you. Took care of your mom and dad, and your house even, but it didn't work on you, and that's why you're famous, Harry. No one ever lived after he decided to kill him. No one except you. And he'd killed some of the best witches and wizards of the age. So Hagrid goes on to explain things in the detail that he thinks he's allowed to give, because he wants Dumbledore to tell Harry what had happened to his parents. He felt that that's the right thing to do. But since Harry doesn't know anything at all, Hagrid's got to give him some information. Hagrid looked at Harry with warmth and respect blazing in his eyes. But Harry, instead of feeling pleased and proud, felt quite sure that there had been a horrible mistake.
No, you've made a mistake. I mean, I can't be a wizard. I mean, I'm just Harry.
A wizard? Him? How could he possibly be? He'd spent his life being clouded by Dudley and bullied by Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon. If he was really a wizard, why hadn't they been turned into warty toads every time they tried to lock him in the cupboard? And the reason I wanted to point that out is because that tells me what kind of person Harry is. Harry is the person that he is because he is humble. And the reason he is humble is because he has lived a life of servanthood his entire life. He's been a servant to the Dursleys. He's never been given anything. They never take him out. They never allow him to enjoy ice cream. Any ice cream he has is Dudley's leftovers. Whatever Dudley doesn't want. That's what Harry gets. Harry never gets new clothes. He gets Dudley's old clothes hanging off of him. And you can see it in this part of the movie. That humility is what leads Harry to become the hero that he has to be to defeat Voldemort. Dumbledore knew this. Dumbledore took Harry to the Dursleys, knowing that they were not great people. But I think Dumbledore knew what Harry had to become, the kind of man Harry had to become in order to be the hero. And he knew that this life of servanthood would make Harry humble. The humility would lead Harry to value things that people may overlook. We see throughout the movies that Harry has a deep appreciation for his friends. He loves his friends very much. And when it comes to bullying, he knows what it feels like to be bullied. He's been bullied his whole life by his aunt and uncle and his cousin. And we see at Hogwarts when Draco bullies Harry, Harry stands up for himself. But Harry is humble enough to not take it personally. And I think that's what made the difference in Harry in allowing him to become the hero he needed to be. Because he did save Draco toward the end. And that in itself saved his life. So this whole glimpse of the personality of Harry and the psyche of Harry and his character, I felt like all of that was overlooked in the movie. But we get to see the humility of Harry. He wasn't boastful. When Hagrid told him he was a wizard, he was like, "What? Me, a wizard? Can't be. I'm just plain old Harry Potter." And that's what I love about this character. He's humble. And Hagrid asks Harry, Well, have you ever seen anything strange happen to you in the past that might make you think you could be a wizard? And Harry remembers his haircuts from Petunia, and the next morning his hair's grown out again. He remembers the snake at the zoo and nearly killing Dudley with the snake. And there was the part of jumping on the roof. So Hagrid and Harry are talking, and Vernon jumps up again. And he says, I am not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks.
Never insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me.
I like how they did include Dudley's pigtail in the movie. That was great. And then Hagrid looks at Harry and he says, I would appreciate it if you didn't mention that to anybody. I'm not supposed to do magic. So after that point, Dudley's running around with a pigtail, and Harry decides he's going to go with Hagrid. It's like, stay with the Dursleys and get beat up some more, or go with this guy and become a wizard. Yeah, he decided to become a wizard. I say excellent choice on that one. So Hagrid gives Harry his coat to put over him in the rain, and Hagrid tells him, oh, don't mind if it wiggles a little bit. I got some field mice in there or something. So he keeps owls and field mice in his pocket. He probably keeps the field mice in his pocket to feed the owl. And that's kind of gross. And that finishes up chapter 4, guys. I hope you liked this video. Like I said before, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. Lets me know you enjoy it. And hit me up with some comments. I'd really like to know what you guys think about this, think about my thoughts on it, and I want to hear what you have to say. I'm sure you guys know some things about this story that I don't know yet. And thanks again for watching. Until next time.